He thought it'd be funny. A joke between rounds. "Hey, you," he'd said, pointing at her with a lazy grin. "Want to step up? Let's see what you got." Some of the others chuckled, not because it was funny, but because he made it look like it was supposed to be. She didn't laugh, she didn't frown either. She just stood there. Unreadable. Calm. Her locks were tied back. Her shoes are still on. She wasn't even in gear yet. You could see it in some of the younger guys' eyes. The assumption they all made. Oh, she's new. Oh, she's soft. Oh, this'll be good. But what they didn't know, what he didn't know, was that she had trained in 3 countries. That she'd once stood alone in a dusty Thai gym with bruised ribs and a busted toe and still dropped a man twice her size. That she didn't raise her voice to be heard because she knew what it felt like to be underestimated and how to use it like a blade. Still, she said nothing. Instead, she slowly stepped forward and slipped off her sneakers. The sound of her feet hitting the mat was like a clock starting. You could feel it. Something off about her energy. Not scared, not nervous, just waiting. "I'm not gonna go hard on you," the black belt said with a smirk, tapping his gloves together. "Just a friendly roll. You good?" She nodded once, another chuckle from the back. A whisper, "This is gonna be embarrassing." They had no idea. I was sitting by the mirrors, wrapping my wrists, barely paying attention until her stance shifted. That was the first red flag. Not to them, but to me. Because her frame, it didn't say beginner, it said control, poise. It said, "I'm only giving you what you asked for." 3 seconds later, the gym would explode. But in that moment, the breath before impact, it was just her and him, 2 silhouettes on the mat, surrounded by laughter that hadn't realized it was about to choke. And when the silence came, it was sharp, humbling, beautiful. They say you never forget the moment your pride teaches you something your mouth never could. And that's exactly what happened. Right before she moved. Absolutely champ. Here's Chapter 2, keeping perfectly in alignment with the tone, pacing, and tension built in Chapter 1. This section lays the groundwork, introducing the gym, the environment, and the 2 main characters, all while preserving the quiet storm that's brewing beneath the surface. If you're already watching, go ahead and subscribe to Echoes of Hope Stories HQ, where true stories of injustice meet unforgettable justice. And drop a comment letting us know where you're watching from. I want to see flags from every corner of the world. It was just another Tuesday at Bishop's Combat Studio. The kind of gym where sweat stained the mats by noon and where the punching bags rattled like clockwork in the corner. It wasn't the cleanest place or the biggest, but it had heart and hierarchy. A very loud, very visible one. At the top was Travis Bishop, founder, coach, and former light heavyweight champ in regional MMA circuits. But the real peacock in the room that day wasn't Coach Bishop. It was Sean the Dragon Delaney. A 3rd-degree black belt. Broad shoulders, shaved head, walk like he owns the place attitude. He wasn't just good, he knew he was good. Flashy, loud, kind of guy who measured his self-worth in knockouts and Instagram followers. Everyone called him Sean, but he called himself the Dragon during warm-ups. No one had the guts to stop him. Sean had a reputation, a good fighter, no doubt. Quick reflexes, strong legs. But he had a habit, a bad one, of confusing confidence with invincibility. Especially when it came to newcomers. That's where she came in. She walked in just after warm-ups. Quiet, no entourage, no flustered trainer introducing her. Just a duffel bag over her shoulder and calm in her step. Mid-30s maybe. Athletic build, black hoodie, sharp, intelligent eyes that scanned the room like she'd been there before. Or somewhere tougher. Coach Bishop had barely looked up from his clipboard when he nodded her toward the sign-up sheet. "Just observing today?" he asked without glancing. She paused, thinking about rolling. She replied. Her voice was low, even-toned, no edge. "All right," he said, still scribbling. "Just shadow at the back till we get you paired." And that was it. No fanfare, no welcome committee, no questions about her rank, her background, her training history. In a place like Bishop's, if you didn't speak up, people filled in the blanks for you. And what they saw? Just a woman with soft eyes and quiet energy. Not a threat. Sean, of course, noticed. He made a comment during stretches. Something about tourist energy. It got a few snickers from the regulars. Not cruel, not direct, just enough to set the tone. Enough to mark her. She didn't respond, just sat at the back, tying her wraps slowly, watching the drills. Not with awe, but with analysis. That's the thing about silence. It makes people uncomfortable. They project onto it, misread it, underestimate it. Sean took it as submission. Coach paired people up for light sparring. Most stuck with their usual partners. Sean? He looked around for someone new. That's when he spotted her standing alone by the water cooler. And then came the line. "Hey," he called out, grinning like a wolf. "Want to roll one round? I'll keep it light." A few heads turned. Coach looked up, surprised. She shrugged once, "Sure." That single word changed the air in the room. You could feel it, the slight shift, the prelude, the trap he didn't know he'd just stepped into. Because an ordinary day at the dojo had just taken a very extraordinary turn. You could feel it the moment she stepped onto the mat, the shift in energy, low and subtle, like static before a storm. But not everyone noticed. Some were too busy whispering. "Bet she just does cardio kickboxing or some yoga-adjacent thing." Sean leaned back, tapped gloves with a smirk, and said loud enough for everyone to hear, "Don't worry, y'all. I'll be gentle." There it was. The punchline he needed, the joke that reinforced the pecking order. He wasn't just challenging a new student, he was making a spectacle of a black woman, the only one in the room, and packaging it as entertainment. What none of them realized was, she'd seen this before. In grad school, when a professor handed her a beginner's syllabus assuming she was in the wrong class. At work, when white clients asked to speak to someone in charge, while she was literally running the department. And now here, in a gym full of men who'd decided, without a word from her, that she was unqualified, fragile, and unworthy of even basic respect. Sean wasn't just cocky. He was weaponizing the room's assumptions, turning her into a prop for his ego. A crowd formed. You'd think someone was about to film a commercial, the way phones subtly appeared half hidden behind water bottles and gym bags. She glanced at one of them, didn't flinch, just tightened the strap on her glove. "I'll give you the first move," Sean said with a wink. "Ladies first." It was an insult wrapped in chivalry, and no one said a word. Not Coach Bishop, not the white belt tying his laces 2 feet away, not even the assistant trainer, a guy who'd spoken about respect on the mat just 10 minutes earlier. That's the thing about racism in rooms like that. It's rarely loud. It's quiet, casual, baked into tone and smirks, and who gets the benefit of the doubt? She didn't need a speech to respond. Her silence was cutting enough. She took her stance. Traditional, balanced, the kind that speaks without talking. One of the guys near me snorted. "She's about to fold like paper, watch." But she didn't speak. I just watched her eyes. There was no fear, no hesitation, only calculation. Like she'd already mapped out every outcome and was simply choosing which version would hurt him the most without bruising her own dignity. Sean circled once, bouncing on his heels, taunting. She didn't move. You could almost hear his thoughts. This'll be easy. That was his first mistake. And hers was letting him believe it. Because when a black woman walks into a room like this, quiet, alone, and underestimated, she's already fought half the battle before anyone ever throws a punch. Sean clapped his gloves once, loud enough to draw more eyes. "All right, the crowd's watching. Don't embarrass me now," he said, grinning. Another joke. The kind of joke that punches down, the kind people disguise as just playing. But everyone knew what it meant, especially her. Especially the way the word embarrass curled out of his mouth like he already believed he couldn't be. He wasn't inviting her to spar. He was setting her up to be mocked, filmed, and turned into another meme to fuel his feed. She said nothing, just met his eyes with the quietest kind of defiance, the kind that doesn't bark, doesn't posture. It remembers, it listens, it chooses. "You sure you want to do this?" Sean added, mock concern in his tone now. "Could always back out. No shame." He turned to the crowd like a stand-up comic milking a set. "She got that look like she just came from Whole Foods," he said, drawing a few cheap laughs. And there it was. The disrespect moved from subtle to racial, coded but deliberate. Because what he was really saying, what every smirk in that room translated, was this: she's not one of us, not strong enough, not serious enough, not black belt material. The same way gatekeepers have always treated black women who don't scream to be heard. If she wasn't loud, she must be weak. If she wasn't stomping around like she owned the space, then she clearly didn't belong in it. She rolled her wrists once, nodded, and said flatly, "Let's go." Sean blinked. He hadn't expected that. You could see it in the flicker of doubt that crossed his face. Coach Bishop cleared his throat from the side. "Light contact," he warned. "Controlled spar. Show respect." Sean gave a casual salute. "Of course, Coach." But everyone knew Sean only respected people he feared, and in his mind, she wasn't one of them. They squared off. Her stance was tight, composed, a low center of gravity, guard up, weight evenly distributed. Sean looked relaxed, playful. He bounced on his toes like he was prepping for a performance, not a partner. "You lead," he offered, beckoning with a hand. "Show me what you got." She didn't. Instead, she waited. The air changed. Even those laughing a minute ago sensed it now. Something coiling beneath her stillness. Something patient, purposeful. Like she was giving him every last chance to walk away with his dignity intact. He didn't take it. Instead, Sean lunged, quick and loud, a flashy inside leg tap to throw her off balance. But she didn't flinch. Her arm shifted, clean and sharp, redirecting his motion with quiet precision. It wasn't just skillful, it was surgical. Gasps rippled through the crowd. And for the first time all day, Sean didn't have a comeback. He was in now. Really in. And the joke? It had already left the room. The sparring match hadn't officially started, but the atmosphere had shifted like a thundercloud rolling over the mat. She hadn't thrown a single strike yet, and still, Sean had stumbled. Not physically, but psychologically. That tiny moment of imbalance, it wasn't about technique. It was the beginning of something deeper. Doubt. She stepped back to her corner while Sean adjusted his belt and smirked like nothing had happened. But his eyes betrayed him. Because she'd done something few had ever managed, made him hesitate. And in a room where he was used to owning every inch, hesitation was a crack in the throne. Across the gym, Coach Bishop squinted. You could tell he was just starting to really see her. And maybe he was kicking himself for not asking about her credentials. But that was the thing. In this place, you had to prove your worth twice if you weren't a man. 3 times if you weren't white. 4 if you were a quiet black woman who didn't brag or bark or wear her belts like trophies. She didn't need to. Her body carried its own record. As she knelt beside her duffel bag, she reached in, not for water, not for gear, but for a strip of worn black cloth, frayed at the edges. It wasn't for show. It wasn't her belt. It was her late grandfather's hand wrap. A man who taught her the first jab when she was 11 years old on the back porch of a Louisiana house, beneath mosquito-bitten dusk and the hum of summer. Never fight for pride, he used to say. Fight because they didn't think you would. She wrapped it slowly around her right wrist, her expression unreadable. Someone whispered near the water cooler, "Yo." She moved like she'd been trained somewhere real. Sean heard it, his jaw tightened, just a little. Still trying to laugh it off, he shadowboxed to distract himself. She's stiff. One lucky move. Bet. But you could tell, he didn't believe his own words anymore. Back on the mat, she stood tall, arms loose, chin tucked, breath even. She wasn't preparing for a show. She was preparing for clarity. A reckoning. Because this wasn't just sparring anymore. This was about every room she'd walked into where people had looked past her. Every time she'd been talked over, sized up, and written off. This was for the professor who assumed she was there to clean the lab, the TSA agent who patted her down twice, the yoga mom who said, "Wow, you speak so well." This wasn't about Sean. This was about a system, a culture. A world that asked her to shrink just to be allowed inside. And now, she wasn't shrinking anymore. She walked to the center of the mat, eyes locked on Sean. Not angry, not smug, just ready. And that was the scariest kind of opponent, the one who wasn't there to win. She was there to teach. The bell rang, not an official one, just the coach's slap against the edge of a punching bag. But in that moment, it may as well have been a war drum. Sean launched first, fast, flashy. A spinning back kick meant to graze her shoulder and show dominance. It was his signature, a crowd pleaser. He didn't expect to connect, only to intimidate. But she didn't move. She didn't flinch, didn't blink. She stepped inward, inside the arc of his spin, and planted her palm on his chest to redirect his momentum. His body twisted off balance, and for half a second, his foot skidded across the mat. There was no impact, just precision. The kind that doesn't bruise but cuts something deeper, pride. The gym rippled with silence again. This time it wasn't confusion, it was recognition. The same way you'd go still watching someone defuse a bomb with calm fingers and steady breath. Sean tried again, quicker now. Jabs, feints, a low leg sweep, and she moved through them like smoke. Tight pivots, subtle shifts, no wasted energy. She wasn't just trained, she was trained well. But that wasn't what stunned people. It was the way she moved, like she'd done this under pressure, like she'd sparred in heat, in noise, in environments that demanded survival, not medals. She ducked one of his overhands and tapped the back of his leg with her foot, a tiny signal that she could have swept him if she wanted. The crowd gasped. Even Coach Bishop stood now. "What's your rank?" he called out, finally realizing this was no novice. She didn't answer. Because that wasn't the point. Her presence was her answer. The gym had always been Sean's stage, where his white skin, black belt, and confident swagger created an aura too thick for anyone to challenge. But now, it was evaporating, slowly, one movement at a time. She countered a sloppy clinch attempt with a tight inside elbow, just a touch to the shoulder. Controlled, deliberate. But it made Sean stumble back 2 steps. He raised his gloves higher now, breathing heavier. "She's holding back," someone whispered. This time it wasn't mockery, it was awe. And they were right, because this was never about humiliation. She was teaching. Every movement was a lesson in restraint, in grace, in what happens when someone's skill is dismissed because of their skin, their gender, their silence. Sean wiped sweat from his brow, suddenly unsure how to close the distance. She waited. She didn't need to move. He was unraveling himself. In every gym, there's a moment where dominance shifts. Not with a knockout, not with shouting, but with awareness. Recognition. This was that moment. And as she exhaled slowly, her stance loose, her eyes unshaken, the gym finally understood what Sean didn't. This woman didn't come here to prove herself. She came to remind them all. She never had to. It happened so fast, some people didn't even see it. Sean had one last burst of ego to burn. Maybe it was desperation. Maybe he thought a surprise takedown would win back the room. Maybe he just couldn't accept that he wasn't the center of the story anymore. He lunged, a sloppy double-leg attempt with more rage than technique. She shifted to the side, calm as dusk, and turned his forward motion into a trap. One hand slid across his back, the other under his arm, a textbook redirect. Then she swept. One fluid motion. Sean's body hit the mat with a thud so clean, so complete, the sound carved into everyone's memory. That was it. No knockout, no wild throw, just skill, quiet and undeniable. And then silence. It fell over the gym like fog. No gasps, no cheers, just stunned mouths, blinking eyes, and a slow, creeping awareness that they'd all just witnessed something bigger than a sparring match. Sean didn't get up right away. He wasn't hurt, not physically, but something in him had cracked. You could see it, the disbelief, the embarrassment. The weight of being exposed, not just as arrogant but wrong. Coach Bishop took a step forward. "You okay, Sean?" Sean sat up slowly, nodded, but he didn't speak. All the swagger was gone. No jokes, no smirks, just a man sitting on a mat realizing he'd built his throne on assumptions and they had just collapsed beneath him. She extended a hand to help him up. He stared at it for a moment too long. Then, to his credit, he took it. The crowd watched as she pulled him gently to his feet, her grip steady, her expression unreadable. She turned to Coach. "I've trained, overseas, under Grandmaster Liu in Seoul, Muay Thai in Chiang Mai, BJJ out of Sao Paulo." Coach blinked. You're legit." "I didn't come here to prove that," she said calmly. "I came here to train." That line, simple as it was, struck harder than any punch because it held weight from a lifetime of being second-guessed, ignored. Spoken over, assumed small. She hadn't raised her voice once. She hadn't boasted. She hadn't needed to. Her skill did all the talking. And now, the gym had no choice but to listen. Sean mumbled, "Respect," as he backed away. You could tell it wasn't just a word. It was surrender. It was growth, the beginning of it, at least. Phones were being slipped quietly into pockets. No one dared post the clip now, not out of fear, but out of reverence. The gym stood still, and in that stillness was a reckoning. Because no matter how loud the world had tried to silence her before, she had just responded with absolute, commanding silence of her own. And no one would ever look at her the same way again. By the time she stepped off the mat, the entire gym felt different. Not visibly, not in layout or lighting, but in atmosphere, in how people looked at her and at each other. Where there had been smirks, there was silence. Where there had been arrogance, now, awkward humility. Sean was still on the far side of the mat, stretching like he was pretending to cool down, but his eyes never left her. Not with resentment, with something closer to shame and growth. Coach Bishop walked over, for the first time with full attention on her. "I owe you an apology," he said. She looked up. "For what?" "For not asking who you were, for letting that match happen the way it did." She shrugged. "You're not the first, won't be the last." But it wasn't bitterness in her tone. It was truth. The lived kind. The kind that settles into your bones after years of being mistaken for invisible, or worse, unqualified. Around the gym, conversations shifted. Whispers turned into quiet discussions. A few of the regulars were Googling Grandmaster Lou on their phones, trying to understand what they just witnessed. One white belt approached her, face red. "Ma'am, sorry, what's your name?" She smiled. "Kenya." He nodded, a bit too eagerly. "You're incredible." Kenya nodded back. "I know." It wasn't cocky, it was grounded. She wasn't trying to impress, she was just done shrinking. Sean finally walked over. No posturing, no rehearsed speech. "I was out of line," he muttered, "and I judged you way before you stepped in." Kenya tilted her head. "Because I'm quiet?" He hesitated. "Because you're a woman, a black woman." There it was, not just an apology, a confession. And in that moment, she could have ripped him apart, could have humiliated him back. She had every right to. But she didn't. She extended her hand again. Takes more strength to own it than to win a round. He took it, this time without hesitation. The gym clapped, not the thunderous kind, just a scattered ripple. Respectful, sincere. Later that week, Kenya came back. Not as a guest, but as a coach, quietly invited by Coach Bishop himself. No public announcement, just a class sign-up sheet that read, "Women's Striking and Self-Defense, Instructor Kenya Adebayo." And the first to sign up? Sean. Followed by 3 other guys who had laughed during that first joke. The gym didn't transform overnight, no place like that does. But the culture had been cracked, just enough for light to leak in. In Kenya, she never raised her voice. Never once demanded their respect. She simply walked in, held her space, and reminded everyone that being underestimated is not a weakness, it's an opportunity. For everyone else to learn. It started with a whisper, then a screenshot, then a shared video clip that somehow survived being deleted. The clip didn't show her winning with a punch. It wasn't even dramatic. It was a short, grainy moment, the clean sweep, the calm stance, and Sean sitting on the mat blinking up like a man who'd just seen something divine. No flashy editing, no soundtrack, just truth. By the end of the week, that clip had circled its way through local MMA groups, feminist forums, black martial arts networks, and eventually, social media. The caption was simple. They laughed, then she moved. And just like that, Kenya, the quiet woman they assumed came for cardio, became a symbol for something bigger than any sparring match. At first, it sparked debate. Some dismissed it. She probably got lucky. She caught him off guard. She's not even wearing a guy. But others dug deeper. They saw the form, the fluidity, the poise. Black coaches and women fighters across the country began reposting the clip, using it to open conversations about what it means to train in spaces not built for you, and still dominate them with grace. Kenya didn't post a thing. She kept showing up to Bishop's twice a week. Same hoodie, same pace, same soft smile. But the class roster tripled. A group of teenage girls joined, then a pair of moms, then a security guard who worked night shifts and said, "I just want to feel safe." What changed wasn't just enrollment, it was posture. Men stopped offering to go easy. No more jokes before warm-up, no more performative ego, and it wasn't fear that changed them. It was respect. Because they'd seen something most of them never had before. Not just power in a black woman, but power wrapped in silence, in stillness. She hadn't performed for their acceptance. She'd forced them to confront why they needed a performance to respect her in the first place. Sean never asked for a rematch. Instead, he trained harder. Sat in on her classes, sometimes stayed behind after everyone left, just to ask her about footwork or transitions or breathing control. One evening, he said something that stuck. "I thought I needed to be loud to be seen. But you flipped that on me." She'd only replied, "Sometimes the most dangerous person in the room is the one who doesn't need to prove it." The gym wasn't the only thing that changed. Other dojos in the area started reaching out, asking her to teach seminars. Not for optics, but because their students were asking for it. Because black girls who'd never stepped into a mat room before were sending emails that started with, "I saw your clip." And that's when it became clear. This wasn't about a sweep or a spar. This was about how one moment of quiet excellence from someone the world tried to ignore became the ripple that cracked centuries of noise. Sometimes power doesn't enter the room with a bang. It walks in quietly, watches, listens, waits, and when the moment is right, it doesn't roar. It moves. Kenya never needed to prove herself. She'd done the work, paid the dues, held her head high in places that looked down on her, rooms where her presence was met with smirks instead of respect. But when she stepped onto that mat, she wasn't just standing up for herself. She was standing for every black woman who's ever been underestimated. For every quiet fighter who's ever been mistaken for weak. For every moment someone thought your skin, your gender, or your silence made you lesser. That gym didn't just learn about martial arts that day. It learned about dignity, about grace, about what it means to carry your power without apology. And what about Sean? He didn't become a villain. He became a mirror, a reflection of how easy it is to fall into the trap of casual supremacy, the kind that hides behind jokes and tradition and just the way things are. But to his credit, when the truth hit him, he stayed in the room. He listened. He learned. That's the challenge for the rest of us too. So now I ask you, yes, you watching this, who do you underestimate? Who have you written off without asking their story? Who in your space have you silenced with your assumptions? And what might happen if, just once, you paused long enough to let them show you who they really are? Because this isn't just a story about a fight in a gym. It's a story about what happens when the world decides you don't belong and you walk in anyway. When someone points and laughs and you say, okay. When they expect you to fall and you teach them how to stand. If this story moved you, don't just clap from the sidelines. Speak up. Step back when needed. Make room. Challenge those jokes that punch down. And when you see someone being silenced, ask yourself why and what you can do about it. Because silence can hurt. But sometimes, silence is the most devastating reply of all. And Kenya, she answered without a single shout. And the whole gym, the whole world, heard her anyway. If you view beliefs like Kenya's deserve to be seen, shared, and remembered, hit the like button, drop a comment below with your country, and subscribe to this channel for more real human stories that remind us what strength truly looks like. This is Echoes of Hope Stories HQ, and we'll see you in the next one.